Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Today we are going to create a vintage look Valentine's card. I posted this card a few weeks ago back on the Bello's Facebook page and got so many likes that I decided to do a video tutorial on how I made it. So let's start out by looking at the supplies that we're going to use. We're going to use a piece of the multifarious Smooth and Supreme cardstock. I have cut this one to be 4 3/4 inches by 3.5 inches. We're then going to do a frame around our artwork. So I've just taken a piece of brown cardstock. I've cut this one to be 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. Then for our cardstock background, we're going to use a kind of a corally color. We will also go ahead and distress it just a little bit with some vintage photo. This is an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock that I cut in half, and then I just folded that in half. For our stamps today, we are going to use the Lavinia Berry Wreath with mini berries. This one is LAV 568. And we will use the Tilly and Tango, our two little mice, and they are LAV 726. We'll also use a background script. The one that I recommend getting that is actually on my wish list, I don't have it yet, but it is the background script LAV 372. I wish I had this one earlier because I love the hearts in it, but I didn't have that one, so I put it on my wish list, and instead I just have this old wooden stamp that I had on hand already that I will use today. Also, we will have a little tiny sentiment stamp that we will use down here at the bottom. You can use anything you want. Again, this one was one of my old stamps, and I just used the love portion on this old wooden one. But any little sentiment that you like to use can be used down in that particular spot there. For stamping, we are going to actually do a brown stamping because we're wanting to keep this with a vintage look, and so I'm going to be using the VersaFine Clair Acorn. For our inks for our background, we are going to use the Distress Ink Salt Water Taffy, Tea Dye, Vintage Photo, and Antique Linen. I will be creating, or I did create, a heart mask. I did not have one that was pre-made, so I basically just printed one out on a piece of paper and then cut out the shape that we will use here. You'll want to be sure and have both the positive and the negative piece because we'll be using both pieces. We are going to be using liquid pearls today to add a few little accents. This one is called Gold Pearl. We will be using some blending brushes and a little dauber for applying our inks. To put our card together, you can either use a running tape or a paper glue. This one is the Ultra Bond adhesive. I also have a spray bottle on hand because of the process that we're going to use for creating the background. And then I will be using my stamping platform with a sticky grid on it. I like to use the sticky grid so that I don't have to use magnets. I also have on hand a fine point black pen that I will use for some of the ground details here. Because of our technique that we're using on our background, you may also wish to have a heated tool or a blow dryer on hand to help dry up our inks when we work on our process. So let's go ahead and get started making our card. So start out with, we're going to do our background first. I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to get my piece of multifarious cardstock here That is cut to the 4 3/4 by 3 1/2. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take each of our inks and I'm going to put them on the surface of my work table and spritz with water, and then we're just going to dab our card into it. So let me show you how that's going to work. You may not be able to see some of these colors right away showing up because of how light they are, but you should be able to see the results as we do it. So I'm going to start out with the tea dye, and I'm going to probably put it over here on the white side that you can't see off camera. And I'm just going to dab it. Let me kind of show you just a little bit what I'm doing here. So I'm just dabbing the ink down, and then I'm going to spritz it with water. So that's what I will be doing with each color. So then what we will do is we'll take our card and get it back over there so you can just see. And I'm just going to dab and tap it around and pick up some of that ink. Now you can't see it real well, like I said, because it's a light color. I'm going to go ahead and dry this. Just a little bit, and then I'll go ahead and apply another layer. So I'll take a little bit more of my tea dye, dab it down on my work surface, spritz it with some water, and drag my card through it to pick up the ink. And dry it just a little bit more. Alright, now I'm just going to kind of wipe up the excess a little bit. And we're going to move on to our saltwater taffy. Again, the same process, just putting some of the ink down, spritzing it with some water, and then dabbing and swiping, smooshing around. I don't know what the official term for this is. I call it the smooshing technique. So basically just trying to pick up some of the color that we've laid down. See if there's enough left that I can pick up a little bit more, or if I have to add a little bit more ink. And you can dab or pat or smoosh around or however you'd like to get the color down on the card. And let's see, let's do, I think that's enough right now on that color. Let me go ahead and move on to our last color, which is going to be the vintage photo. And again, we're just going to dab it onto our surface, spritz some water on it, and dab and swipe around. Alright, and I think I want to get just a little bit more of the saltwater taffy there in the center. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of that. Dab it just a little bit there in the center so we can get a little more pink, corally pink color. All right. So now I'm going to bring my camera back over this way so we can continue working on the background. Wipe up my wet spot so I don't put my elbow down in it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of punch up the background just a little bit and make it blend and smooth out a little bit. So I'm going to take my antique linen and I'm just going to lightly go over the entire surface. By doing this, this kind of helps to soften it and bring it all together. And as the color name indicates with the antique linen, it kind of gives a little bit of that antique-y paper look. All right, and then I want to put just a tiny little bit of the saltwater taffy. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit to draw out some more of the pink. Alright, so it might be a little hard to see the pinks on the camera. I'll take a picture at the end of our finished product and you'll probably be able to see a whole lot more of the pink look on it. That gives it that nice pretty antique look. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to putting our heart on there. So we're going to start out, and what I always do, just because I am very bad about messing up and wiggling things around, I like to take my project down to my desk from my work surface when I'm working on certain pieces of it, so that it doesn't wiggle around and mess up my project. So then I'm going to take, and actually I'm going to hold this up to the light, but what I'm going to do is I want to center my heart in the middle of my card. So I am going to kind of line that up so that I can see the card through it just a little bit, through my paper mask. Then I will stick it back down and I'm going to tape down my heart mask, which I just wiggled it just a little bit. I have to scoot that back in place. So I'm going to now tape my mask down so that I don't get it out of alignment while I'm applying the ink. Alright, so now what I want to do is go back to my saltwater taffy, and I'm going to be layering this on fairly thick. I want the heart to be to show up, but I want it to be a shadow. I still don't want it to be like a starkness, but I need to put it on dark enough that you can actually see the outline of the heart. take a peek. Yes. All right. So let me cover this back up, and then we're going to remove this mask. This is our negative mask. Take that off, and you now see that we've got our lovely little shadow look of the heart on our card. Now what I want to do is take my positive. And I actually don't like mine to dip as much, so you might be able to see I actually cut my heart just a little bit where it has a little bit less of a dip. I didn't want to go quite down that far. So what I'm going to do is then line this up over my heart. And I will again take either some painter's tape, or you can use the Sweet Poppy low tack tape. This one works really well. I use it quite often. It won't lift up your ink off of your project. Comes off, and it comes off really easily. So I'm going to line this up over the top of my heart that I just did the darker color on. So at this point now, we're going to take our VersaFine Clair, the acorn, the brown, and we're going to stamp some of the letters, the little background. Now on this one, you can probably see I've got it where it just kind of cuts across. So the way that I do that is I take a piece of some scrap paper, figure out exactly where I think I might like for those words to be, and then take my stamp, ink it up. Now if you want this to be real light, stamp it first down so that you get a lighter inking, or you can do just a first generation. I think I'm just going to go ahead and just stick with the first generation of the ink. Line that up where I want it. Take my stamp and press down on it. And then you can see I've got my kind of antique looking words in the background of my card. I kind of wish I'd gotten a little bit more here, but that's okay. We will go with this. So now I can go ahead and remove my little heart mask. So now we're going to go ahead and stamp our mice. For that, I'm going to pick up my card and take that little piece of tape off the back, and I will use my stamping platform. So I'm going to lay that down, and I'm going to go ahead and set some of my inks aside here so that I don't knock them off. Get them out of the way. And then I'm going to take my mice and put them on the inside of my heart. So I have got Tilly and Tango. I'm just going to line her up right there. Again, we will be using the acorn. And I'm going to ink up Tilly. I'm assuming that's Tilly. Actually, I don't know which one is which, but that's okay. All right. I think I'm going to put just a tiny little bit more ink on her. Sometimes when you do the layering like that, you need a little bit more ink to make it be a good strong color. There we go. Alright, and we will take Tilly off. And line Tango up so that it looks like they're dancing and touching hands. Or close to touching hands, however you'd like to set it up. And same thing. I will ink up Tango. I'm going to call him Tango. If anybody finds out that they're different, if they're reversed, you can let me know. Okay, give him just a tiny bit more ink. Alright, there we go. Now we are ready to go ahead and give them just a little bit of ground to stand on. So to start out with, we're going to go ahead and just take our vintage photo and a little dauber, and I'm just going to put a little bit of this brown kind of here underneath their feet to kind of give just a little bit of a shadowing. Or some ground underneath them. And just dab that on with my little dauber. And then I'm going to take that black fine tip pen and I'm just going to draw a little bit of ground with some grass sprigs around their feet. And just kind of sprinkled around just a little bit to kind of indicate that they're not floating in the air, they're actually on the ground. There we go. You can kind of just add it wherever it looks best for you and however much you'd like. That just keeps them from looking like they're floating away. Alright, so now we are ready to start stamping our vines. This can get a little tricky because the shape might not be necessarily just perfect for our heart. So with this, I am also going to use some paper to help kind of lay it around and mask off. So I'm going to take this and trying to follow along with the shape of my heart. I'm going to lay my little piece of scrap paper. I think I might do just another little bit on the edge so I don't get the sticky grid all messed up. So mask off where I don't want that to stick. And get that lined up again. Kind of where I think it should go on my heart. Ink it up and stamp it down. All right, so there's my first little sprig. And I think I'm going to take this second piece. Maybe come around my heart about like that. And again, I'm going to want it to be masked off so that part of it doesn't make it get too far out from the shape of my heart. Get that put back down. There we go. All right. Stamp up my stamp, ink it up with my brown ink again. And again, trying to follow the shape of my heart. Get my berries going around the edge. All right, so now we are going to go back to the other top part of the heart. And get that to follow the shape. I'm actually going to end up doing two different stampings on that because I don't want it to get too far out of line. Like I said, this part's just a little tricky because it's not necessarily, the vines aren't necessarily heart-shaped, so you kind of have to use your imagination to get it to be the shape you want it to be. All right. And I think we'll cover up right there and use this. That looks like that's shaping pretty well around the shape of the heart. And maybe this will be our final stamping for that shape. We'll see how it looks. All right. All right, there we go. Now, if you decide that you want to add any, you can take little parts of your stamp, you know, and place it around and add some. This particular stamp also comes with a tiny little piece that you can use. Let's see. I'll show you. It's got like a couple of little berries that if you needed to fill in. So let's say we thought we needed a little more berries or something up in one of these spots. Then you can add some in, either using this little piece or go back in and use a part of that. I think I'm just going to go ahead and leave this the way it is and not mess with it anymore, because sometimes I overthink and then I end up messing it up. I don't want to do that. All right, so I did forget earlier that I like to put a little bitty heart just kind of right there above their hands. I have, oh gosh, I don't even know where I got this little set a long time ago, but it has this little teeny tiny heart, which works really great when you're wanting a very tiny one. But it is very tiny. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it on a little acrylic stamp block. Again, using my brown acorn, I'm just going to get a little ink on that, center that above their hands, and get a little heart there. Later on when we'll come back, we'll make like a little row of dots coming down with our liquid pearl, so it looks like it's kind of hanging over their hands there. Okay, so now we are ready for our little sentiment. This is the one that I did. I went ahead and stamped it a little earlier. What I did was I had made some extra using the smooshed technique so that I could stamp this and then cut it out. And we're going to place that right about there. And we will use that, we'll do a little dimensional. But first what I want to do is I like to go ahead and just kind of antique the edge up a little bit. You can probably see on this one how I just put just a little bit of ink around it. All I did was take my piece and just kind of dab it. And sometimes you don't know what you're going to get. But that's kind of the fun, interesting part of it. And again, I'm just kind of dabbling it along the edge. I think I'm going to get it in just a tiny little bit more. To me, that just kind of gives it a little bit, adds a little bit more to that vintage or antique-y kind of look. All right, so there we have that. And I just realized that I forgot to grab my little dimensionals, and so in just a moment I'll turn off the camera and go get it. But before we do that, we're done with our stamping, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this from my stamping platform. Set that aside since we don't need it anymore. And then what I like to do is I like to have a little bit of also antiquing around the edges of the frame. To me, a little framing kind of pulls the eye towards the center. So I'm just going to take my vintage photo and take my little mini dauber, and I'm just going to swirl around the edges. To just kind of create a little bit of a antique-y, distressed looking frame. There we go. To me, that just kind of gives it a nice little finishing touch. Okay, so hold on a second for me if you don't mind. I'm going to stop the camera, go get my little dimensional, and we'll mount our little love word. Okay, so what I did is I just went and grabbed one of these little foam dimensionals. Double-sided stickiness on both sides. And add that to the back of my little piece here. Now I think I'm going to go ahead before I do that and put my card together. That way I don't have to worry about it being uneven when I'm trying to add my
framing my card. So I'm going to take my artwork, and I'm going to go ahead and, for expediency, go ahead and use the running tape. And mount the artwork on our frame. So that's all set. Now, one of the things with this particular card color that I've got, it's pretty bright and it doesn't look very antique-y to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that vintage photo and my dauber again, and I'm just going to go around the edge. And antique it up. Let me soften it up just a little bit right there. And just kind of give it a little of an antique-y coloring to it. It's not going to show up a whole lot because our border isn't very big on the card, but this just kind of keeps it from being quite so stark, I guess you might say. I did get it a little dark at the top. So let's see if I can soften it a little bit. Whoops. By just adding a little bit of the saltwater taffy. Make it not quite so stark. I should have probably dabbed that off just a tiny little bit. But you know, hindsight, right? All right. And I think what I may do, just see if this will work a little bit, because I really got that a little dark. I've got a little sand eraser here, ink eraser, and I'm just going to lighten up that just a little bit since I got it a little bit too dark. Alright, maybe it's not quite so dark. Alright, so now we've kind of got that little bit of an antique-y look to it. Oops, let me grab another tape. That one ran out. Alright, and we will tape that down. To our card front. Now we can go ahead and add our little dimensional. So that stands up just a little bit. And now you're like going, well, Cheryl, didn't you say something about using the liquid pearls? Yes, I did. One of the reasons I like to wait until the end is that it's very easy to smudge your liquid pearls. So if I get my card all put together and then do my liquid pearls last, that gives it time to dry without the opportunity of me accidentally smudging everything. So we will start out. Make sure that I'm getting my flow right. So I'm going to start out by putting a little necklace on my girl mouse. Just teeny tiny little gold dots to give her that necklace. Then I'm going to put some dots right above my heart. just to kind of make it look like it's hanging.
See if you can see that.
And then I'm just going to randomly go around some of my berries here and put some gold dots on those.
And then I just put a few little dots right there around the love
to just dress that up just a little bit as well.
Let's see if you can see that, if I can get the camera to focus in on that so you can see all the little dots that we did with our liquid pearls. And so now we are done with our card. Thank you for watching my video tutorial today. I hope you enjoy making this vintage Valentine's card. Remember to check out the delbellosdesigns.com website for more tutorials on the design team page. Have a great day.